समझ कि आपने 30 नंबर का वो ओपन ही है, कर दो क्या उसको, उसी को लेके करेंगे।
ओपन है मतलब
कैलेंडर अभी भी ओपन ही है, मतलब दिखा तो रहा है। ये पार्टिसिपेट आए थे, 6 में से 2 सस्पेंड है, बाकी के बचे 4।
एक बार उसे जेल में पूछ लेना, वही कर सकते तो उसके लिए।
Good morning to all of you, to all the academicians, faculty members, teachers. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning to all the faculty members, academicians, scholars, teachers, students, and dear participants. A very hearty welcome to our two-day international webinar on the topic Delving Deep, Language Skills and Undercurrent Personality Traits. Now, even within the threat of coronavirus and its other associates, we are still to organize another webinar. And this time we are blessed with a number of resource persons and speakers with us. And it is their kindness that they accepted our proposal to give a talk in this webinar. And the very topic that we have chosen, delving deep and language skills and undercurrent personality traits. Now, this topic goes back to many months to be prepared, and we are here to come up with this topic, and I hope that this topic will prove to be beneficial to all the students wherever you are in the other ends. And now I would like to give a formal expression of thanks to the members. Now, first of all, I would like to express my warm thanks to the chief patron of this webinar, Dr. A. Muthamma, Secretary, Higher and Technical Education, Daman and Diu, Dadra Nagar Haveli, India. Now, I would like to express my thanks to the chairman, Mr. Nilesh Gaur, Director, Higher and Technical Education. And now, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks and honor to our Honorable Principal, Dr. Avinash R. Chaudhary, who is the convener of this two-day international webinar. Now, apart from these names, I must thank the organizing committee as they are providing their help for the throughout two-day webinar, and they are working very hard with us. So, and last of all, I would like to express a warm thanks to all the resource persons, especially Dr. Sasan Basgir, who is geographically remote, though, but he is very close virtually with us, and who is a famous poet and musician. He doesn't need any kind of introduction. And we have another speaker, Dr. Archana Kumari, Associate Professor, Department of English, Center for Foreign Languages, who is working in Central University of South Bihar, who happened to be one of my teachers in my PhD course. And then we are happy to have Dr. Sahil Mohammad Delabul Hussain, who is Assistant Professor in KIT, Odisha, India. And I am also happy to express my hearty thanks to Dr. Sneha Misra, Assistant Professor, School of Social Sciences and Languages, VIT, Tamil Nadu, India. And last but not the least, I am very happy to announce the name Dr. Harpreet Kaur, who is very kind to accept our proposal to give a talk in this webinar, who is Assistant Professor, English Department from Jeshua. Jajwal Adib Naveen Girls College, Janjgir, Chhattisgarh, India. Uh, Thank you so much, sir and ma'am, that all of you have accepted our proposal. Hope all of you are doing well. And still, the second wave of coronavirus hits the streets all over the world. But still, we are ready to face it with all our arms. And now this platform suits the best to talk about, to have a dialogue and to have a negotiation with all our renowned resource persons. Thank you. Now, I would like to welcome our Honorable Principal Sir to give his inaugural address and give some valuable words for us. Over to you, sir.
Hello, hello. A very good
Yes,
morning
sir,
to
you
all
are
the
audible.
faculty. Okay, hello. A very good morning to all the faculties of different institutes from the different parts of the world, academicians, research scholars, teachers, and my dear students. Government Engineering College Daman functions constructively under the UT administration of Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu, which is approved by AICT, New Delhi, and affiliated with Gujarat Technological University, Ahmedabad. In addition, the institute has been paying a very serious attention to the underprivileged students from the rural as well as tribal areas in order to groom them up into becoming a skilled technocrats replete with ethical and moral values and a discipline in their professions as well as a strong awareness for the society social responsibilities. A very warm welcome to one and all in this international webinar on delving if language, skill, and undercurrent personality traits. As the second wave of the COVID pandemic hits the global village in unpredictable temper, we have come up with this topic as it has become the need of the hour. As a convener, it is a matter of great pleasure to heartily welcome the renowned speakers of the today's webinar and express thanks to them for affording time to give a deliberation on this international webinar. To be precise, I would like to thank Dr. Sasan Bazgir, Assistant Professor, Poet and Musician in Iranian Classical Music, Islamic Azad University Medical Science Branch, English Department, Tehran, Iran. Now again, I thanks to a second speaker, Dr. Archana Kumari, Associate Professor, Department of Civil English, Center for Foreign Language, Central University of South Bihar. Now, I would like to thank the third speaker, Dr. Sahel Muhammad Delabul Hossain, Assistant Professor, School of Humanities, Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology, Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Now, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to speaker number 4, Dr. Sneha Mishra, Assistant Professor, School of Social Science and Languages, Vellore Institute of Technology, Tamil Nadu. Last but not the least, I would express my warm-hearted thanks to Dr. Harpreet Kaur, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Government, Jajwal Dev, Naveen Girls College, Janjgir, Chhattisgarh. It's a matter of great pleasure to have welcomed all the eminent speakers signing up from divergent geographical setting across nations, and I'm quite sure that all of the deliberations will benefit all the participants now and even in the today's to come. I express my thanks to Professor Devashish Mitra, host of the webinar, to the organizing team, including Professor Vinay Khatod, Professor Dhawal Junjurwadia, Professor Nisarg Bhandari, Professor Dhawal Bhandari, Professor Sandeep Kumar, and the last Professor Janbaks Wavaria. Once again, on behalf of Union Territory Administration of Dadra Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu, Government Engineering College Daman, I welcome all the resource persons and viewers for the international webinar on on the title Delving Deep Language Skill Under Current Personality Traits. I wish them good luck and thumbs up for the 2 days international webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Uh, Thank you so much, sir, for your warm inaugural address to us. Definitely, all of your words will resonate in our life. And now, I would like to welcome Mr. Vinay Khator, who is going to address the keynote for us. Over to you, Vinay, sir.
Thank you very much, Devashish sir. A very warm welcome to one and all, whoever is present in the other end. We are going to start our 2 day international webinar on the topic Delving Deep Language Skills and Undercurrent Personality Traits on 22nd and 23rd April 2021 in Government Engineering College, Daman, under Union Territory Administration of Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu. Before I enter into the theme and crux of the webinar, I must thank our Chief Patron, Dr. A. Muthamma, Secretary, Higher and Technical Education, for her support to organize this 2 day international webinar, even in this time of global crisis. I would also like to thank our chairman, Mr. Nilesh Gurav, Director, Higher and Technical Education, for the encouragement for the academic enterprises. I would unfailingly express my thanks to Dr. Avinash R. Chaudhary, Convener and Principal, Government Engineering College, Daman. I would also like to thank Mr. Devashish Mitra, host of the webinar, Assistant Professor, Department of Humanities, for his cooperation for the webinar. I thank our organizing committee for the continuous technical support that they are providing sportively. Now to all the resource persons, academicians, faculties, research scholars, professors, teachers, students, and dear participants, a very hearty welcome to our webinar. To talk about the topic of the webinar, that is delving deep language skills and undercurrent personality traits, we have come up with this topic not only for its entries in every educational institutes and academic syllabi all over the world, but also for the critical juncture we are going through as the COVID pandemic and its unpredictable associates make our life challenging to a larger extent. Therefore, the role of language plays an instrumental role in the totality of an individual's personality. In the recent times, many innovative ideas and thought-provoking alternatives to the approaches to language skills is changing the basic notion of personality. In addition, this slow but steady change has started offering a dynamic nurture and nature of personality for both personal and professional spheres. This 2 day international webinar aims at investigating the interdisciplinary nature of language and personality and how they negotiate with each other in order to set a platform in which a host of newer views and ideas of language skills with personality building can be shared. For the success of the webinar, we are blessed with 5 renowned resource persons, and it is a matter of great honor for me to introduce the speakers. Dr. Sasan Basgir, Assistant Professor, Poet and Musician, Islamic Azad University, Medical Science Branch, English Department, Tehran, Iran. Dr. Archana Kumari, Associate Professor, Department of English, Center for Foreign Languages, Central University of South Bihar. Dr. Sahil Mohammed Delabul Hossain, Assistant Professor, School of Humanities, Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology, Bhubaneswar, Odisha. Dr. Sneha Mishra, Assistant Professor, School of Social Sciences and Languages, Vellore Institute of Technology, Vellore Campus, Tamil Nadu. And lastly, but not least, Dr. Harpreet Kaur, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Government, Jajwalia Dev Naveen Girls College, Janjgir, Chhattisgarh. I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the resource persons for accepting our proposal to virtually come and give talks in the webinar. And last but not the least, we are happy to share that we have received around 300 registrations from many institutes of different sites and corners of the country. I wish a grand success for the two-day international webinar. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for your keynote address. Definitely, as you said, that even the associates of the second wave of coronavirus hits, but still, and also it is not merely for the webinar, that it is not merely in the academic syllabi. It will also help us to deal with the life-threatening problems in right now or in the days to come. Now, uh, we are going to start our first session, and it's a matter of great honor and immense pleasure for me to welcome Dr. Sasan Bazgir. And before I welcome him, I would like to give a very brief introduction about his some feats and achievements. And he is working currently as an assistant professor in Tehran Medical Science Branch, Islamic Azad University, Iran. He presented and published many papers, articles in different international and national journals, presented papers in many conferences, and he has a number of books to his credit. To name a few, Wooden Guard, a book of Persian poems; Gambler, a book of English poems; Small Black Faces, a book of Persian poems; Autumnal Winds, collection of English short stories, which is under publication. And there are many other books also. And if we put aside all these things, then he is a famous poet and musician too. So we are very delighted to listen some bits of his musical brilliance. So, for his skills, he is a composer of more than 100 songs for Iran national television and radio, and releasing more than 15 Iranian classical albums in Iran and 2 albums in India. Composing music for several movies and documentaries. Composing for a documentary in India called Pune, documentary for India TV called Sound of Persia. Many interviews with Indian medias. And we should be delighted to know that he has completed some of his higher studies courses in India, specifically in Pune University. So, first of all, thank you so much, sir, for accepting our proposal to give a talk in this two-day international webinar. And basically, we struggled hard to get you. And after days of, problems and technical glitches, we are happy to get you today. So, sir, the forum, the platform is all yours, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So, I would like to thank, first of all, Mr. or Dr. Devashish Mitra, who was in touch with me for all these days because I had some technical problems, and he kindly solved all of them. I'm happy here to be with you, with my Indian friends, because I've always said India is my second house. Because I was living in India for 8 years for my BA and my PhD. I would like to express my thanks to Chief Patron Dr. A. Mutamma, the Chairman Nilesh Gora, and Dr. Avinash Chadori, and all the organizing committee. I know how it's difficult and it takes long time. So, and the government engineering college affiliated to Gujarat Technological University. So thank you. I know how it's difficult to arrange such a program, but I would like to start my talk. And at the end, I would like to play some pieces, Iranian classical pieces that I have composed when I was in India. So I can remember those days. So as you know, my talk is about killing two birds with one stone using, or the advantage of using literary text in teaching EFL and ESL students. And beforehand, I should say that my major is literature. So I try to look at this topic on a literary angle and my own experience after many years of teaching English. So, unlike most of the specialists of language skills, I would like to have my literary and artistic point of view on the process of language learning. Of course, I strongly believe that language should be learned and taught by academic approaches, and no one can deny the techniques, approaches, materials, and academic texts. The problem is with the lack of social-political and human science aspect of the language. You know, the problem is here that we always use some fixed text. They're like a kind of cliche. Of course, they work for learning English or teaching English, but they lack something. The students cannot enjoy it, and they don't learn anything more than the skills. So today, I plan to work on the advantages of using English literary text in the process of language learning. So by literary text, I mean fiction, which is short story, novella, novel, and then poetry and drama. And before opening my argument, I should clear it out that by English literature, literary text, I never mean the white or black English or American writers. It includes all authors all over the world who write literary text in English, no matter if the author is from India, from Iran, Nigeria, or any other country. And by language and language skills, I never mean only English language. But since we are here to talk about English language, we can call it English language skills. I would like to initiate my talk by a simple question. Why most of the students cannot learn English during the high school and even in university, in BA I mean an acceptable mastery over language skills, like listening, speaking, reading, and writing. You may answer that there are some who learn, but here we are talking about the majority of the learners. I believe even those small groups, they have had exposure to English language from childhood. That's why. So I have been traveling many countries and I have seen it in most of non-English countries. Students cannot learn English skills like other students. The main reason could be the pedagogical mistakes, as I have observed and heard from my different colleagues. Most of such high schools and universities follow the same pattern and material. The most problem begins with the GT method, which is using a text and following it. Concentrating on form and vocabularies of the formal text. No one can claim that he or she have been able to teach all skills properly. It could improve the reading and writing skills to some extent, but never help students for listening skills and to make them speak up. That's the problem. These texts just make the student to read and sometimes write. But most of the times they are not able to speak, or the listening is not that, that good. So I can give my personal experience with such out-of-date approach in Iran and India. Since I'm an Iranian scholar, I have been teaching English language and Iranian classical music for more than 20 years. Unfortunately, we had the same approach in Iran till the last decade. Unfortunately, we are changing it. At the same time, I have done my MA and my PhD in English literature in India, University of Pune. And I'm proud of it, of course. But I found that many of my classmates who had done their BA in English literature still couldn't express themselves. And some of them were getting panic while speaking English. I could ignore my own country. You know, in Iran, English is a foreign language. But I was wondering, how is it that in India, English is the second language, but still many of my friends, of course, they knew English, but I don't know why they couldn't speak properly. But the unbelievable part was that my Indian friends' reading and sometimes writing skill was unbelievably better than I was. So we were not comparable. My reading was poor. I couldn't compare myself with them because they used to read so many texts. It proves that reading text and focusing on such approaches will not lead to a mastery over all English language skills. Here, I would like to talk about my own personal experience, how I learned English. You know, in Iran, people cannot speak in English. Of course, nowadays, the new generation, they speak fluently. But I'm talking about my own experience, how I learned English. The time I was in high school, maybe you have heard about it. It was a war between Iran and Iraq, unfortunately. It was a killing war. And every day they used to bombard each other, to send missiles to each other. So there was no school. So they asked people to go to villages, to remote places, to be safe. So on such area, we didn't have English teacher. Of course, there was no school, so we attended villages, and wherever there was a school, we could attend it. But nobody knew English at all. And I was one of those who never got a good mark from English. And like my other classmates, nobody take care about English those times. Of course, I was a good student in other subjects, but in English, I was in a big problem. So after some years, so I never got, because in Iran, the highest mark is 20. And if you get 10 out of 20, it means you have passed it. So I never got even 10. But there was a rule, if you pass all your papers and you only fail one paper, that's okay. So I used that rule anytime for English. So I never read a word of English because we had some books, the teachers used to come and read it, give us some grammatical points. This is present perfect, present continuous. That's the rule. So we didn't enjoy it. Finally, after some years, one of my uncles, he came to Iran. He was living in Sweden, and of course, he was native in English. And he's not too much older than I am. So I think maybe 7 or 8 years. And he checked my English and he found that it's terrible. So he made a politic. He told me I didn't know what he's doing. He said, "Here I'm alone in Iran. Can I speak to you in English every day? Because maybe I forget my English." It was very difficult for me because I got headache. I was sleeping. I didn't like to listen to English because I couldn't understand even a word. So he was in Iran only for 3 months. But after 1 month, I found that I understand what he says. So I started speaking little by little. Then I remember he gave me a book of shorts, very, very short stories. Each page was a short story. And they were very simple. And he said, okay, read it and tell me what you understand. At the end of second month, I could speak normally. And when he left Iran after 3 months, I could speak about general topics without thinking. And then he gave me another book of short story, but this time it was smaller and a bit difficult. After that, I found that English is such a simple topic for students. And soon I got my diploma. I applied for the university. I was accepted in one of the best universities for English for doing my BA in English. So to conclude that, we cannot learn English only by fixed grammar, technological text, political text. We need some literary text because they're interesting and they are written by authors, thinkers. They give good samples to us. They give some lessons for our life. And I should emphasize that not English, all languages should learn first by listening, then speaking, reading, and then writing. But in many schools and even university, I can see they just work on reading and writing. So that's a problem. So after all these experiences, I prefer to get back to my main topic, which is using literary text in improving language skills. It is important to clarify it that by literary text, I don't mean they are the only valuable text. I never mean that you should only use literary text. But these literary texts are the best alternatives for formal textbooks. A good literary text can stimulate the process of language learning among students. Students who have studied wide range of literary texts kill two birds with one stone. They are not only exposed to a variety of new vocabularies and structures, but also make good response to the society. It increases their imagination. They use very interesting and beautiful words and structure in their conversation. Using a well-known quote or a lovely couplet from a sonnet can make a great sense between the speaker and the listener. Such students can attend various discussions and express themselves better than others. One more excellent and advantage of literary texts is that they involve the students in the process of learning. The plot, the suspension, the dilemma in the short stories and novels make the students to read more and more because they are curious what will happen at them and then what will happen. So the student's voluntary exposure to text creates a special involvement in the learning language. While the formal textbook lack, no student is interested in such books. I don't say they are bad, but it's not interesting for them. So literary texts help language learners to learn the language unconsciously and effortlessly. One of the best ways to improve students' English extensive is One of the best way to improve students' English is extensive reading. And it can be very motivating to finish an entire book in another language. For such purpose, teachers can use simplified versions of literary text. I emphasize the simplified textbooks because there are many great novels, but they have been simplified and they are very interesting. For example, The Brave Heart. It has been made into a movie. It has been written as a novel and as a simplified novel. Most of the children and students, they love it. So the other interesting way is to introduce the fiction that have been made in films or TV series. Most students are familiar with such interesting sources, and it encourages them to read or watch them. Another issue is that as a global village, many students tend to study abroad. I'm talking especially about Iran. So those who have studied wide range of literary text will come up with cultural differences. I have seen that when students go to another country, they have many cultural problems. They cannot understand why these people are different. And the reason is that they don't know about the culture. But when you study novel and short story, you get familiar with different cultures. So it's not only learning language, it's giving you some lessons how to live in other countries. Such students can admit the differences and get along with other classmates and neighbors. You can't believe when I was in India, all the people in the neighborhood, they were in touch with me. I played music with them. I invited them for dinner, lunch. They invited me because before I come to India, I used to study lots of literary text and write, read, play music. So it was easy for me to be in touch with any people. So, in fact, they get familiar with socio-political background of the language in advance before they go. Such language learner can discuss political, social, cultural, and any other issues. They have enough information from their study. In simple language, we can say that using formal or scientific text is the same as, it's very important. It's like a worried parent. They love their children, but they always tell them what to do, what not to do, because they love their children. But does it work? Always do this, don't do that. But there is no guarantee for children to follow up them. But literary texts are like parents who behave on the best way without speaking. They are like a mirror. They don't say what to do, what not to do. They behave on the best way. And the children observe and they learn. And when they get up, they will imitate them. They will do the same behavior. In fact, literature helps language learners to broaden their understanding of human and humanity. It teaches them that they are a part of the humanity and should follow up social rules. On the other hand, such texts are a good example of writing skills for language learners. They are exposed to many good texts written by creative writers. They, co- uh, they copy the structure unconsciously and use them whenever they need. According to Howey's observation in 1972, I quote, literature will increase all language skills because literature will extend linguistic knowledge by giving evidence and subtle vocabulary usage and complex and exact syntax. So, through reading literary text, the learners meet many kings, So when they are reading a novel, they meet kings, soldiers, queens, winners, losers, lovers, thieves, and so on. So sometimes they find themselves as one of the characters. The student begin judging or guessing the end of the story. And this part is very important. Instead of just reading a scientific text, now they are involved in a text. They like to be like the hero, like the queen, like the king, like the lover. If I were there, I could do this. So that's kind of unconscious learning. Such a great experience gives clues to readers to solve their similar problems in the future. They come to know how bad characters are punished and good ones deserve a great life. The readers try to imitate the heroes and condemn the anti-heroes. Condemn, sorry. According to Hedge, I quote, literary texts can develop students' knowledge of language at the level of vocabulary and structure and at the level of textual organization. So the study of literature can provide students with a fresh and creative angle with which they can approach their studies and their lives. English literature helps students to learn about their creativity and imagination. It makes them to interact with the text themselves. Literature encourages students for interaction. That's what we need in learning language. We need interaction. Literary texts include multiple layers of meaning. So you can get different meaning from a sentence. And it helps you how life is going on. And we should be careful about whatever we say and what we read. It will be effectively remembered for discussion and sharing feelings or opinions. You can remember the stories, you can remember the quotes, the couplets, and when you speak, you can use them. Literary texts expand awareness of the learners. So you get lots of knowledge from literary texts that you cannot get it from any other books. They get familiar with different speakers and different cultures, but standard texts are formal and limited to grammar and some required information. Of course, I never mean they're not good. We need them initially, but we can use, as I said initially, apart from these formal texts, we should use literary text as well. Also, literature is often more interesting than the text found in course books. Teachers can use audio text. Nowadays, there are many books, novels, short stories. They have been audiobooks. So you don't need to ask a student to read the book. They can listen to it. So it improves their listening, but they are listening to a short story, to a novel, to a poem. So they not only improve their listening, they learn new structures, pronunciation, new words, structures. That's why I say killing two birds with one stone. Of course, I never like to kill any bird. No one should do that. That's only an idiom. So you see, they learn a lot from literary text. Now, I would like to talk about different models of teaching literature. How many models do we have? I would like to talk about some major ones. So there are different models, of course. The first one is cultural model. This model considers a literary text as a product. So what is important is the text. In fact, the text itself is treated as a source of information about the target culture. We can say that it is the most traditional approach. This model will work on the social, political, and historical background to a text. But there is a problem with this model, and it is quite teacher-centered. And it's not good for teaching English. and just concentrate on the language and on the text. The second model is language model. Fortunately, it is quite learner-centered or student-centered. In fact, by the time that the students are reading the text, they pay attention to the way the language is used. They will get the meaning through text and increase the general awareness of English. Here, the teacher can choose some grammatical points and new vocabularies and work on them as other teachers do on courses. At the same time, the teacher can use stylistic analysis, which is a close study of linguistic features of the text to enable students to make meaningful interpretation of the text. The third model is personal growth model. The same as the previous one, this model is also more student or learner centered. This model makes learner to draw on their own opinion, feeling, and personal experience. It creates a kind of interaction between the reader and the text itself. So we need this interaction. One of the advantages of this model is that it makes the language more memorable. That's very important. You can memorize such text. In fact, after a close reading by the students, they make text their own. That's also important. It not only increases their language skills and grammatical points, but also improve their knowledge about the world around them. That's all I want to talk about. So when we are teaching language, we can teaching something else. That's very important. And we can do it only by literature. Because in literature, we have politics, we have sociology, anthropology, archaeology, and so on. All of them, they are included in literature. So next step on my talk, I would like to talk about the lesson plan. So we can arrange some stages. Stage one is a warmer. So start a warmer that makes a student thinking about the topic of literary text, like warm-up questions we used to do in the class. It could be a short discussion that the students do in pairs, a whole class discussion, a guessing game between teacher and a class, or brainstorming of vocabulary around the topic. So the teacher can start talk about the story, the text, give some hints, some clues, some vocabulary. So they get familiar with this word. The warmer should focus at the source of literature that will be studied. So we should talk about the source that we are talking about, not any other issue. First of all, the teacher should make sure that what the student already know about the author and the era when the text was written. So the teacher can, for example, if you want to talk about, for example, Anton Chekhov, the Russian writer, it's better to give some information about Russian literature, the era Anton Chekhov was writing. He was a doctor, a physician. So just simple information. It helps them. The teacher can give the students some background information to read, but it should not be too long. We should not speak too much about the text. The teacher should avoid to overload the text. That's very important. The teacher should give some information about the importance of the author and text in literary work. For example, if it has been made a film or quoted by many politicians, people, TV, radio, and so on. Because a student would like to know who is this person, this writer. Is he or she a famous writer? Okay. For example, when you talk about William Shakespeare, it's better to use to be or not to be, and then you can explain it. So what is to be? You can use it for teaching to be verbs. And then you can give a lesson behind to be. That, of course, you should give the story of that prince, how his father was killed with his uncle, and so on. And finally, shall we live but suffer, or no? Shall we do something and be killed? That's to be or not to be. So they learn something else apart from the language. So stage 2 is pre-teaching very difficult words. This stage should be taken cautiously. The teacher should not kill the whole text by spending too much time on pre-teaching vocabulary. So the teacher should not waste the time, maybe half of the class, only for some words. The teacher should limit the amount of words, just the keywords. Then we use prediction. Here, the teacher should give the student some words from the extract and ask the student to predict the words and even the story, what will happen at the end. If the given text is a play, give them a couple of lines of dialogue and ask them to make prediction about the play. If the given text is a short story, the teacher can read the setting, the beginning of the short story and ask about the rest of the story. The student can use their imagination to predict. In fact, we are teaching them how to improve their imagination. Another approach is giving students a taste. In such approach, the teacher read the first part of the extract with the student close, while the students close their books or turn over their papers. The teacher should read the extract in a normal speed and even quickly. Then teacher asks the student to compare what they have understood, what they should do it in pair. So they give a summary of what teacher has said. Then they report back to the teacher. Next stage is understanding the text, general comprehension. As we know, one of the most important aspects of reading literary text is getting pleasure. That's very important. First of all, when we read literature, we should enjoy it. Enjoying from reading and entertainment. Enjoying from reading and entertainment. On the other words, one of the aims of teaching literature is to evoke interest and pleasure from the language. That's very important. If students are supposed to do a task by any reading, for example, you give one sentence and then you ask many questions. So there would be no pleasure from the lesson. And the student don't like to do that. First of all, you should let them to enjoy it. They should be involved in the text. They can own the text. And then you can work on it. The soon the student read the text once, teacher can start warm-up or comprehension questions about the context or the vocabulary and keywords. Teacher can spend a short time for what the students have read. Teacher can ask the students to give a summary of what they have read. One way of checking students' comprehension is asking them to explain the text or the story to each other. They can also argue the issue in the text. For example, why do you think the protagonist rejected the gift from the king? Why didn't Hamlet kill his uncle? Why, anytime he decided to kill him, but not? Such questions make the student to speak. So it's good for the speaking. So reading, then speaking. When the teacher speaks, it's listening. And then they should have some writing assignment. Stage 4 is understanding the language. At this stage, try to work on the difficult vocabularies in the text. The student might be able to guess some of them from the context and don't need to check a dictionary. So when they read the text, they can guess it from the context. The teacher also can give some hints to the students. So the next part I want to talk about is how to use different literary genres. So if you want, for example, to use a short story, read the first part of a short story and ask the student to guess what will happen after that. Or read the last part of the short story and ask what has happened from the beginning. I remember, I can give one of my experience, and it was very valuable for me from Pune University. The soon I came to Pune University, I found that we have a professor, Professor Rajrao, R. Rajrao. He's a famous author, novelist, and poet. He was teaching there in the English department, and I found that he is teaching creative writing, short stories, and poetry. So I attended all his classes, and nowadays I'm teaching the same thing in Iran and wherever I go. I remember one of the techniques he used. He gave us a short story, Necklace, by Guido Maupassant. He's a French writer. He said, okay, read it. When you finish, change the end of the short story and make a new short story. So we did it. Then he gave another short story. And he said, okay, read the characters, make a new story, but these characters with this personality, they should be in the new story. Again, he gave us another story. He said, keep the ending, but create new characters, and so on. You can't believe it. After one semester, it was very easy for us to do any writing, and it improved our imagination. So it not only improved the students' speaking skills, but also make to have a great interaction with the text and own it. That's very important for you to own it. Like the music, because I'm mostly a musician. First of all, I'm a musician, and then a poet, and then an English writer. So whenever I teach music, I never start with theories, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, the notation I mean. Or for example, I never teach anything else. I just take the instrument and ask the students to imitate it, to follow me up. So after a few sessions, they enjoy it. They learn the piece, they own it. So now they want to reproduce it. That's what I want to say. In literature, we allow the students to own a text so they can do whatever they want. And every person can use his own or her own imagination. There is no limitation for it. But other texts are fixed. You cannot change it. For example, water is boiled at 100 centigrade, or so on. Sun is hot. Winter is cold. So what can you do with them? Of course, there are some good samples, but there is no interaction. They have to just memorize it. That's it. So if, for example, the teacher can ask a student to talk about the similar events that they have experienced. So when you read a novel, so you can ask your students, have you ever experienced such events, or have you heard about it? So what happened if you were, for example, the major character or the hero, the protagonist? What could you do? Do you think, for example, the princess could marry, for example, marry the prince, or no? So what happened to you? if you were her or him. So it makes the student to enjoy it. Yes, if I were a king, I were a prince, a princess. So they use their imagination. That's why wherever they go, they can speak. They can use their imagination. They have memorized many interesting words and sentences. So another stage is using extract from a play. If you use a play, we can use most of the ideas from the short story here. So the same thing can happen for plays. But obviously this medium gives plenty of opportunity for students to do some drama in class. So ask a student to act out a part of in group. It should be done loudly and in pair. So just ask them to play one act, a short act, but they should do it in pair and they should speak loudly. Ask the student to copy the character's special accent. That's very important. So here they improve their pronunciation. Because in plays, when you watch a play, there are different accents, different pronunciations. So when you copy them, you get familiar. Oh, yes. I would like to give another experience. When for the first time I came to India, I think it was 2000, I think, 20 years ago. For the first time, I came to India with my aunt as a just to visit India. And that time I had BA in English. I was teaching English. So my aunt said, "Okay, your English is good. So ask the policeman where is the exit door." And that time I used to speak very formally and like books. So because my BA is not a literature, is English translation from English to Persian and Persian to English. So I asked the guard, "Excuse me, where is the exit door?" And he said, "Follow me." I didn't understand what does he say. And again I said, "I want to go out. Where is the exit door?" And he said, "Follow me." I told him I don't understand. He took my hand and asked me to follow him. Then I found that these people pronounce F to P. Instead of saying follow, he said follow. So then I learned, oh, in these countries, some people pronounce F as P, as they use T like the in India. So that's exposure. You should be exposed to languages. So in drama, students are exposed to different accents. So when they go to any other countries, they are familiar with it. So it improves their pronunciation and makes them to get familiar with different accents. Ask the student to rewrite the scene. It could happen in short stories as well. They can change it as they like. So you can ask them, okay, you can write another play as an assignment. So, but change the end if you like. Or change the characters, change the dialogues. So it not only improves their reading, because they have to read it, then they have to write it, then they have to talk about it. So it improves their skills. And the last topic for my talk is how do I choose material? How can we use? Because maybe some teachers, they say we don't have any literary text. Of course, everybody has some short stories, novels, plays. I think because if you come to my home, it's full of novels and short stories and poetry and so on. But you can check, even if you check in internet, the name of a book or a character, you can find it. But what is important when you want to teach a literary text? First of all, the teacher should have the basic information about it. You cannot teach something that you don't know about. You say, okay, this book is good, but have you read it? Do you know what is happening here? You should at least read it once and get some information. It should be short enough. You should not use a novel for one session or two sessions. You should use short, limited words. The text should fit with the rest of syllabus. Don't choose any a literary text that is not related to your topic. For example, you want a text about cultural behavior. You want to use, for example, present perfect. So just find a short story that it has used many present perfect tense. But because it's a story, it's very interesting for a student. So when they are reading the story repeatedly, they read the character has said, they have told, she has been said, I have said. So unconsciously, they're learning through a short story. So you can use such text. The text should motivate the student. So when you are supposed to teach, just we should consider the age of the student. For example, if they are in high school, we can give them love stories because at this age, they are interested in love stories. If they are maybe 10 years, 12 years, 15, we can use some fables because such children, such students, they like stories, fables, something beyond imagination. If your students are adults, so you can use serious, you can use very formal literary text. They're strong in text and in context. And the level of the text should not be too difficult. So when you choose something, be careful. You cannot use, for example, a sonnet from John Donne for high school students because most of the words are Latin. It's very difficult to understand. Try to find easy text. So finally, if I want to close the session, we can conclude that using literary text along with other academic course books both improve ESL and EFL students' language skills and broaden their personal point of view. They not only learn language skills, but also will be able to get familiar with different cultures and make themselves to get along with any new situation. I think that's enough for me. And I don't know how many minutes do I have for music. If you tell me, I will go for music session because immediately after that, I should go for a live performance somewhere else. I should save my time. Thank you for listening to me. Hope it was beneficial and useful. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Uh, you talked about many pedagogical mistakes and you basically talked about your personal experience in improving language. And you also give some references, some literary texts by Guido Maupassant, Anton Chekhov, Shakespeare, and some others. And the most important point that will be beneficial for the students is to know how to learn literature in order to understand language. And sir, whatever you said will definitely resonate to the minds of our students and all the other participants. And definitely, literature can be very useful to learn language. And For my information, I think in India, many of the NITs and IITs have some portions of literature for technical students to understand language. So I think that's a good start. And sir, as you promised us that you will be playing uh,
Yeah.
music for us, so I would request you to play the music for us.
Yes, of course. But how many minutes?
Sir, you can play for 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I've composed these pieces in India when I was a student in India, so I'll play them for the memory of those times. That's
Thank you so much, sir. It was really sonorous to listen to this. Thank you so much.
most of.
It's like a, yes, sir. It's like a
Thank,
treat listening to you.
thank
Thank
you.
you, sir. And now, sir, we are going to have some question answer session. And I will request the admin to put the question. Sir, this is the first question for you. Sir, how can a first year student start learning literature in order to speak English language? What is your opinion, sir?
Yeah, as I said, for first year, for those who are the beginners, we should use simplified short stories. First of all, the story is important, not the language. Unfortunately, most teachers they just consider the language. We should avoid it. First of all, let's give them a story. Let them read it. Let them own it. When they learn it, then we teach the structure. But if you start initially with a structure, this is present perfect, this is present continuous, this is dangling, this is what, and so on. Now, just let them read it, let them enjoy it. Then ask them, what did you understand? Can you give us a summary? Even if they make a mistake, that's okay. Just ask them to give you a short or brief notes about the short story. Then work on the vocabulary and structures. That's my opinion, and I have always done it. Then they enjoy it. They have learned short story, some lessons for their life, and some new words and vocabulary. That's my answer to this question.
Thank you, sir. I hope your answer has benefited the participant. Now, I'd like to, yes, another question has popped up. Uh, how do you get students interested in the English subject?
Yeah, that's my trick. Wherever I go, I know what to do. Of course, I teach literature in the university, but in other places where I go, for example, nowadays I teach in medical science branch. It's about medicine, surgery, and so on. But I do the same as other teachers do, but I always tell them a short story in English. I give them a story. I read some poems. I don't teach them anything. But I know, I consider their age, their culture, their background. So there are many short stories, they are famous in the world, and they are very interesting, or some poems. When you recite them, when you read them, anytime they ask me, would you please tell us another story? Would you? Then I give them the book. I can, okay, go ahead and read it. Then we discuss it. We should not work, I don't know, like a mathematic teacher, that this is your text, you should read it. No. Every day, anytime when I go to my class, I recite a couplet, a sonnet, or I tell them a story by famous writers, or even my own short stories, because they should believe that you are also a writer or you have some literary background. So little by little, they get interested. Then you can ask them to work. Or sometimes I tell them, for example, I'm telling you a short story. A person who give me a summary or write a summary for me or send a voice for me about the summary, I will give 1 mark or 1 point for the final exam. There are many different ways. It depends on the students and the university and their background, but it should happen unconsciously. They should come to you. You should give them many materials, but you cannot ask them to get back. Then one by one, they will get interested. They will ask questions. Now it's your turn. But initially, don't behave like a mathematics teacher. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. You should not behave like that. For example, when you go into a class, you start, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? And so on. It's a sonnet by William Shakespeare. Students now at this age, BA especially, they are in love. They are full of emotion. So here we say, the lover says, shall I compare you to a summer's day? And so on. So they like it. They may ask, excuse me, this poem is for who? Who has written it? They say William Shakespeare. Who is William Shakespeare? Then you talk about, then you give another poem. But you should be careful. Don't give any poem you know. Let's see what they love, what they want. Initially, we should be careful. Then, when they get interested, you can give them different text. That's it for me, of course.
Thank you, sir. So the next question has come. Sir, can teaching literature in the class helps in reducing mother tongue influence?
Help reduce other. I didn't get the question properly, but uh, I'm not sure about the question. Can teaching
Okay.
literature in the class help reducing?
Yes, sir. Actually, the question means to say that if we teach literature in the class, does it reduce the influence of our mother tongue while speaking English in the class?
No, nothing can reduce mother tongue. Remember that. Mother tongue exists forever. No one can change your mother tongue. But mother tongue will influence second language and foreign language. That's for sure. But nothing can influence your mother tongue. You have your mother tongue. But literature can help you to use interesting sentences, interesting experience in your mother tongue. But nothing can influence mother tongue. But as I said, mother tongue will influence other language. For example, for me, because mother tongue is Persian, English has never changed my mother tongue. But when I want to speak in English, my mother tongue interferes because I have to think in Persian. So I never believe that literature can influence, reduce mother tongue. But literature is a garden of flowers. So you can pick the best, which, and you can decorate your mother tongue as well. You can use whatever, wherever you want. So it's up to you. It's not compulsory. We just suggest that when you are teaching English, I never mean we should use literary text only. I said it's a good alternative. It helps. In some cases, it helps a student to enjoy learning. You're talking about enjoying learning. The learning should be unconscious process. When it is conscious, you cannot enjoy it. For example, when you love somebody, it is unconscious. You don't know what happened. But when they tell you you should love this person, you may not be able to love him or her. But that's my point. When we are teaching textbooks, of course, they are necessary. Let's use literary text. There is no danger for mother tongue or for second language. It's all beneficial for you. But it's up to you which flower you want to pick up. Hope I was clear. I'm not sure.
I hope, sir, it's absolutely clear. Now the next question has come. How to create an interest among the students of ESP, EST, and ESL?
I think I answered it because I said our literature always should be unconscious. You cannot, even as a poet, when I cannot say today I want to write a poem or a short story. It happens. So we should always talk about interesting stories, interesting results of the stories, poems. So little by little they will enjoy. But I don't mean from the beginning till the end you talk about literature because it's not a literary class. But for example, I don't know. I suggest all the students to read Necklace by Guido Maupassant or The Bet by Antoine Chekhov. Even I have published many short stories. One of them is Mirage. It was published in India. So just read it. At the end, you come to a very interesting conclusion. So when you talk about those conclusions, a student will get interested in that. Oh, that's great. Oh, unbelievable. How is it possible? Then you give next session, you give another one. And then they like to read such text. Then you give them simplified text, not the real text. As I told you, step by step, little by little. You just give them, then you can take. That's it.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Another question has come. Novels to read for beginners. What are the
No,
novels that you would like to suggest?
no. Novel is not good for big. Yes, if your English is great or you're too much strong in literature, yes, you can read a novel. But novels, I never suggest novels for beginners. Even in my talks, I always talk about short stories and poetry, and sometimes drama, small act of drama. We never uh, advise reading a novel for beginners. Yes, in their own language, yes. For example, if they are Marathi, so they can read a novel written in Marathi. If they are Persian, they can read a novel in, yes, that's great. They will love literature. They will get familiar with literature. But if your purpose is teaching language, no, you cannot, because uh, most of the students, they cannot read a novel because they are strong, they are full of new vocabulary, and writers try to use the most important and difficult words and imagination. Even in your mother tongue, when you read it, it's difficult to understand. So it's better to start with simplified novels or short stories. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Uh, the next question, how to find compatibility between our interest and culture? Because they have vast gap. I mean, how to be consistent and stick with it, keep moral up in our very different culture.
It's a very general question. Hope they make it specific. It's a very general question. I'm
So,
reading.
yes, sir. Sir, I think the question means to say that how to find compatibility between individual or students' interest and the culture, perhaps, most probably.
There are many angles in these questions. I don't know which one.
Yeah, actually, sir, this question has come from a student. So,
Yeah, I know.
whatever has come out, he has written down.
Uh, I request him or her to make it specific because I don't know which aspect shall I
Okay.
answer. And I'm
Okay,
a
sir,
bit
we
in
can
hurry.
come back to this. Yeah. Okay, sir, we can come back to this question later. Let's take the next question up. Sir, whenever we try to speak in English, to speak, we think those dialogue in our mother tongue. Is it right? Because it takes time to deliver dialogue. Means how can we produce real time dialogue? So that's the
Yes,
case of influence of mother tongue.
yes, yeah. That's the effect of mother tongue on second language and foreign language. Which I think I answered it. Even for me, I told you because I'm from Persian country, from Iran. So when I want to speak in English, first of all, of course, not for me because I'm teaching and I'm studying, reading, writing in English. But yes, that's why I'm asking you read literature. When you read different short stories, little by little, you own those structures. Because, for example, in Persian, we use the adverb of time from the beginning. But in English, we put it at the end. So the same thing will happen for Indian language and English. We have different structure. That's why mother tongue is the most strongest language for everybody. No language can affect it, but it can affect other languages. So just by reading too much, by speaking, by listening, exposure. What is important is exposure. But when you go for formal text, they are boring sometimes. But if you study a novel, if you watch a movie in English, so it's interesting for you. So it reduces the mother tongue effect. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. This is going to be the last question. How to remove my hesitation in speaking English? Again, it's a question from a
Yes.
student of our college.
Yeah, I know. As I told you, exposure for listening, speaking. I always ask my Iranian students try to find some friends who doesn't who don't know Persian, because the moment you are speaking in your mother tongue, even if you are doing your PhD in English, you always hesitate. You stop when you want to speak. So exposure is important. You should find some people to be in touch. You should watch movies, listen audiobooks, and try to speak anytime. Otherwise, Of course, you know English, you know structure. I know what's your question because most of my students they have the same problem. Their writing is good, their reading is good, but they cannot speak. So try to expose yourself to people who speak English, watch movies, listen to English, and such activities.
Thank you, sir. Uh, I think we have completed all the questions. Yes, any more questions? What, sir, this is the last question.
It's not a question. Yes.
Okay, I think it's a compliment. It's
Yeah,
not a question, it's a compliment for you, sir.
yeah. If
Okay,
you check
so,
if
sir, thank you so much.
yes, if you check my name in Google, especially
Yes, sir.
I've done many concerts in India, in Europe, Iran, so they can find more about my music. And I'm mostly proud of my music, not
Yes, sir.
anything else, because I'm a musician first of all,
Okay.
and so it was all my own experience. People can disagree, but that's all I believe in it.
And thank you, sir. Definitely, as a teacher of English, we must suggest to read literature to the students. At least short stories and poems, if not bulky novels. And basically, the
Yes,
short stories, the world short story writers like even Tagore also can be included, and
yes.
Guido Maupassant, Anton Chekhov, and many others. Definitely, will
Ernest
help the
Hemingway.
students to uh, inculcate some critical insights. Yeah. So, sir,
Thank you.
once again, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
this great lecture. I
I
believe
will
that
be
all
with
of
you
us
for 20
have been
minutes.
benefited
Yes.
from you. And
Okay.
thank you, sir.
Thank
Yes, sir. We are going to have a break, a lunch break. Then we will be back again with our next session, and the next session will be
you. Okay.
headed by Dr. Archana Kumari, and who is Associate Professor, Department of English, Center for Foreign Languages, Central University of South Bihar, and she will be talking about communication skills and personality development. Oh, and this topic is going to be very, very important for the participants, especially for the students, because we are dealing with these topics for different semesters, right? And so we are going to take a short break, and we will be back again in the post-lunch session, and we will be starting from 2 o'clock today. So thank you so much for all the viewers, for the audience, all the students, and all the faculty members. And special thanks goes to Dr. Sasan Polsky. Thank you so much, sir. It's a great pleasure to listen to your lecture. Thank you. We will be right back in at 2 o'clock. Thank you.